Wow, look at me. Out and about on location. Dans la voiture. But you didn't know I was bilingual. So, just sitting outside my mum's. And I thought, you know, just to prove that sometimes I do leave the house, here I am. And it's been a mixed bag of emotion. Interesting few things happening in the past few days. And the first thing I want to mention is on the Friday. I don't know if I spoke about this last time. Last Friday, I think I might have, because I said I got getting caught up. So last Friday, had a little end of exam celebration for my youngest. And as part of the events that unfolded on that day, something interesting happened, which I won't go into. But the significant thing is I received an apology from someone from way back in my past. And it was a very strange situation because the apology was based on some very inappropriate behaviours that had been part of this relationship for a long time. And the apology came as a result of something the other person was going through, maybe to assuage their guilt or whatever. The point that I'm bringing is, are apologies enough? And do we have to feel like we accept the apology, or we have to change our behaviour as a result of someone apologising? Because in this instance, for me, it was just was it awkward? It was just a strange interaction, really, really strange. And my conclusion was the words that came as a result of the apology were all about that other person, making them feel a certain way, or as a result of something that they were going through. And as Nikki said, it was a little too little, too late. And it was kind of just an empty interaction from my perspective. I don't know about the other person, how they felt about it. But this brings me to the idea about boundaries and how significant and massively important it is for us to maintain our sense of what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate for us in our interactions with other people. It is really easy, for example, in this case, when someone issues an apology, for us to then feel like I should react or respond to this apology, or I should perhaps alter my perception or behaviour about the person, the interactions, that things went on because of the apology. But it might not be appropriate, especially when we're looking at situations that may have had behaviours that you've been subjected to over a prolonged period of time, and you may have been traumatised or seriously adversely affected as a result of those behaviours, the interactions, the sentiment behind the interactions with that other person. Then for them to say sorry, I mean, it's great, cool, thank you for saying that, but what difference does it actually make to you in terms of your processing the fallout or the hangover of that interaction, the hangout of having to deal with the consequences, the longer term consequences that it left you? I keep sneezing when I do this. It may just not be enough. I might have to come back later because there's a lot of traffic, and I'm going to do that. So hi, I am back, and it's probably like a million years later, but whatever. Let me finish off that piece about boundaries. So the key thing about boundaries is understanding what we feel good about, what we feel comfortable with in terms of our interactions with other people. And they may not match up. Our boundary may be here and someone else may be wanting to come in here, or not respect the distance at which you're keeping that boundary. I suppose it's better this way, not that way. So you may be here, but someone else may be wanting to come this close. And you're like, no, that doesn't work for me. Do you feel comfortable about the behaviour or behaviours that you're being subjected to? Do you feel comfortable about the language that you're being subjected to? Do you feel comfortable about the expectations from that other person about what they believe you should or shouldn't do? These are all things that affect our interaction with others and that need to form the basis of how we decide what feels safe and appropriate for us with other people. And you may have different boundaries with different people, depending on the relationship, depending on your history with that person, depending on how you wish to nurture and develop the relationship going forward. The most important thing is, do you feel good about it? Do you feel respected? Do you feel honoured and heard by that other person? If not, choose the appropriate boundaries or choose the way that you can work towards having those feelings. And some of that may be deafing off the relationship, but that's a whole nother conversation. So it was really clear to me, going back to this apology that I received, that I made many decisions about that relationship and how to leave it behind 17 years ago. And I had to instill some very clear and definite boundaries that involved continents and oceans to make it clear to that person that the relationship was no longer working for me, because the communications that I tried to bring were not respected. They fell on very deaf ears and they completely affected my safety and the safety of my children. So you may not have to go to such extreme measures, but in all the years subsequent to creating those very definitive boundaries, I have maintained distance. And it felt as though the apology was not about taking into consideration any of my feelings, taking into consideration any of the steps that I had to take to maintain a good level of safety for me and my family. So I'm not going to do anything about it. It doesn't change anything for me. It doesn't inspire me to behave any differently. So I'm inviting you to consider maybe where there are relationships in your life, in different areas of your life, because it may be that they're to do with work, family relationships, relationships with friends, where you may feel that it's necessary to reassess the health of those relationships in terms of how your interaction with those people affects you and your mental and emotional health and well-being. It's so easy to, because we have history with people, because we have a past, to carry on in old habitual ways of interaction without, if you like, taking in an inventory and deciding whether or not these situations continue to serve you. And I say this because ultimately, if you are working to improve yourself in any type of growth capacity, in any type of development capacity, it's important to make sure that the interactions that you are having on a regular basis also have that same or similar approach to them, or similar mindset, or similar goal or outcome, so that there is some type of synergy, some type of support. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to want absolutely the same things, or you have to be doing absolutely the same things in order for that relationship to be nurtured and to grow and develop. But if you start to notice and become aware of places or interactions or the ways that your communication with the other individual, that relation, or within that relationship, is actually hindering your progress. And it may not be an intentional thing. It may not be something that the other person or people are doing deliberately. It may just be that's where they are and that's where you are. But you may have to then make different decisions, whether that is changing the way you interact, as in the length and frequency, or whether that is parking those relationships so that you can see how it feels to negotiate and navigate life without them, or with a reduced interaction until it feels better for you. So there's so many ifs and buts around that, but that is my invitation to you. Consider and look at the relationships that you, particularly the ones that you put a lot of time and investment into, because you are directly giving your energy to other people in that process, and that may not be the best way to spend your energy. So that's the invitation for that. And then the other significant thing I wanted to have a little chat about this week that came up for me, and it's a very interesting one. So I think I mentioned this in the first vlog. My dearest, darling, beautiful, beautiful daddy passed away on Valentine's Day this year. And I didn't want to really go into it just as a random thing, because I knew that there would be more appropriate times to bring this into the conversation. So this week it was challenging for me because as part of my process of grieving, I found myself in a bit of frustration, a bit of questioning about how I am processing his loss, how I am processing, and this is on a cognitive basis as well as emotionally, trying to understand and put into order how, as time passes, the loss continues to affect me. So one of the things that I have heard a lot about people talking about grief and the death of someone close to them, or not necessarily them, or as a concept to others, is that time is a great healer. And the more time passes, the easier it becomes to deal with the loss of that person. And I understand that as a concept. I understand that in theory. It would make sense, wouldn't it? You just kind of get used to it the longer that they are not in your life. So you've had your whole life up until that point with them in your life, and then you have to readjust and find a new way of navigating without them post their death. Yeah, I understand that. But what my experience has been is kind of the opposite up until this point now. At first, because the death was very new to me, it was a shock. It was a disbelief. It was, this can't be happening. I don't understand it, and that's for lots of reasons. I appreciate that life is a part of death. My dad had always kind of made a joke about it's not a joke. I think he was actually serious. It wasn't a joke, but he said it jovially that he was going to wait until he got his telegram or whatever it was from. Does she send an email or a text message? WhatsApp these days, I don't know. From the Queen for his 100th birthday. So he would have been 92 in July. And then he also had another, a joke about Robert Mugabe, because my dad is South African, and he went to Fort Hare, which was a very elite black university, African university in South Africa, which during the apartheid regime, because my dad was born a long, long time ago, as you can guess, was a place for black educated elite from all over Africa. So he went to school with some real heavyweights, and he was part of the heavyweights, but that's another thing. So he went to university with Robert Mugabe, and his joke was always, if he made it to 95, then I absolutely have to beat him. And I didn't question it. When he said those things, I completely believed him. So the fact that he passed before those 2 milestones was part of the reason I was in so much shock. So it was initially shock, disbelief. It didn't compute. I could not get my head around it. But I'm like, okay, we're going forward. This has happened. We're going forward. And the more time passed, the more it began to settle, and it began to percolate through my brain that I'm not going to physically see him again. I'm not going to physically be able to touch him. I'm not going to physically be able to have that tangible human interaction. And I say it like this because one of the gifts that my dad gave me was an understanding of spirituality, and an understanding that what we see and touch around us is not all there is. There is way more to life than our human minds, our logical capacity can understand. So when we're looking at science, it's like the idea of explaining and proving what we can already see, what we already know is here. He gave me a really deep acceptance and also an expectation that life is way more than that. He's a very, very spiritual man. There were loads of experiences that we had together that confirmed my understanding and some of his interaction and explanation about how this was true and how this worked. So on the one hand, I have a real strong sense of him, and I can hear him, and it's just really like mundane, silly things, like when I go to the shops and he'll go, he'll say Jaffa Cakes was like one of his things. He always used to come and bring the girls Jaffa Cakes. It was like a little thing of his. So I remember it was like the first week after he died, and I was in Sainsbury's, and he used to sing Jaffa, 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 like as a thing to the girls when they were really young, and he'd pull out a packet of Jaffa Cakes. So I was just hearing this. I could hear him say it all the way around Sainsbury's, and he kept laughing, and I was like, no, Dad, I'm not going to go and get Jaffa Cakes. No one needs Jaffa Cakes right now, whatever, we're not doing it. And he just kept insisting, going on about it. So I went round to the biscuit aisle where the Jaffa Cakes were, and they were actually on sale. It was something like the 4-pack was on sale for £1 when they're usually £2.50 or £3 or whatever it was. And he started, like, I could just hear him laughing, and it was really funny. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get these Jaffa Cakes. I'll get these bloody Jaffa Cakes. And I had a little giggle to myself because I was like, how funny the way that he communicated that to me. And he kind of insisted the whole way through the shop that I go round to see the Jaffa Cakes. And he was right. I bought them in the end. So I shared this with the girls. So I have experiences like that when I hear him, when I go out walking and he's around, and I sense his energy and his presence, and I hear and I feel guided by a lot of the things that he's showing me. It's like he's guiding my hand, he's guiding the things that I see and I look at. So I have that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, this intense frustration, anger, disappointment, loss, grief, sorrow going on. So these things are happening together, and they're running parallel and concurrently and continuously. And it just is, I feel through the experience of losing him, I have never been so in touch with and, lived through, like tangibly experienced, like viscerally experienced emotions to this level and to this degree. I've got a dead leg, got to move my leg. And it's just extraordinary. the point that it brings to me, because it's like so clear in my mind, having this realization, introduction, clarity on emotion, is how significantly our human experience is not black and white. Our human experience is not either or. Our human experience is not on or off. But we desperately, logically try to condense and file, minimize, limit our experience into two categories. We try to categorize, we try to compartmentalize, we try to keep things neat and tidy and small in their boxes, and this goes here, this feeling is this experience is about that, this goes here, and there's nothing else. But what I have seen and understood unfolding for me over the past 3-4 months is the exact opposite. Is I can have a sense of complete faith and trust that we are more than we can see and touch and understand and explain. And that can give me an intense sense of gratitude, an immense sense of joy, an immense sense of awe and wonder and inspiration. And at the same time, I can be feeling frustration, I can be feeling anger, I can be feeling limitation, I can be feeling how unfair life feels, I can be feeling deadly all at the same time. These things are happening concurrently. These things are happening in parallel. It's not like it's necessary. It may oscillate more from one side to the other, but more often than not, it is happening in tandem, in parallel, concurrently. So why am I saying this? Because when we have particularly maybe difficult or challenging things going on in our lives, and by this it could be, I don't know what my sense of identity is, but everything else in my life is going great. I have a house, I have food in the fridge, I have safety, I have a loving family around me, I have all the things that should be making me feel content. And at the same time, I have a huge sense of non-identity, or I have a huge sense of numbness, or I have a huge sense of confusion about seeing and understanding fully what my place is in the world, because I feel unfulfilled. Or it could be something more intense. You could be uncovering some understanding of how significantly your past, I'm really windy today, I mean that's just how it is, I'm sorry, how significantly your past right here, right now, is confronting you. It's coming in your face for you to look at and deal with, because you've joined the dots and realised that the habitual patterns that keep playing themselves out in your life are not there by accident. But at the same time, you've got all these things that some of these patterns have actually helped you to achieve and spurred you on and pushed you forward in life, happening at the same time. And then you have so much conflict and confusion within yourself, because it's how can I feel this and how can I feel this at the same time? Because you have the magic humanness within you, and you're not right or wrong for having all these things happening at once. And it's not good and it's not bad, it just is your experience. And the reason why it is so beautiful and perfect and magical as a human being to be able to feel all these things at once, and to be able to have this seemingly confusing, paradoxical experience, is because when you sit in it and feel it and listen and pay attention and be inquisitive and curious, you will start to understand that this unfolding and the unraveling that this is causing, these diametrically opposed, paradoxical experiences, I'll come up with a technical word for that, are lighting the way forward. They are showing you the next steps on the path. They are giving you the indications of where you need to go. So sit with it, meditate on it, breathe with it, journal, become deeply accepting of your experience and these conflicts, because they will give you literally the alchemy of transformation. So there we have it. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. That's not how you subscribe, but if you haven't, and I've got some ideas in my tiny brain about how I do this next week. But guys, it's been a blast. So much love. I don't know why I do that.